And so the conversation about the industry and sexualization of characters and all of that is one that I think has to happen on a broader scale.
As female gamers, is it to the point? Like, I mean, that character in particular, Lara Croft, is it offensive?
I don't find it offensive, but I don't offend easily. But at the same time, I see a lot more balance in how they're portraying male characters as well. Not just in video games, but also in movies. Like you can see Joss Whedon obviously has clicked onto the fact that if you sexualize male characters, women get drawn into it. Avengers is a great example of that. And it's the same with video games, because honestly, I've heard my male friends say they'll play female characters so they can walk them watching around, or walking around the screen. I'll do the same thing with guys.
I think some of it too is I mean, it's an industry that needs to make a profit.
That's right.
In the bottom line, and so they will do whatever sells. Whether it is socially acceptable or not is less important to them
sort of an
that
afterthought.
They sell.
Yeah. A great example of that would probably be Grand Theft Auto 5. I mean, even if you've never picked up a video game in your life, everybody's heard of the wild success commercially of course, Grand Theft Auto 5. I was reading, apparently it's the fastest entertainment product ever to reach $1 billion in sales.
Yeah.
So the moral compass is gone. I mean, I've played the game. Clearly it's on the back seat. Is that necessarily a healthy thing?
I think a lot of it, especially in the industry, has more to do with the ease of producing this. This is basically low-hanging fruit from a creative standpoint.
Sure.
It's easier. Technically, it's not that. Technically, it is right up there. I mean, that's the apex of what's possible. Or what it can be done in terms of the visual and the interactivity and all of that. But in terms of story, that's low-hanging fruit.
That's like another
This is not difficult to write.
It's one of those things where people get to defy the rules and they get to defy social convention and explore a part of themselves that they wouldn't normally be able to explore. Now, personally, I think Grand Theft Auto is disgusting, but people really just
chuckles. It's just like, I said it was my favorite game last year on our podcast, so I apologize.
But I mean,
each to their own.
Yeah,
but I wouldn't say that the unconventional or the politically incorrect aspects of that game were necessarily what drew you to it. I mean,
not necessarily. No, like it is also like as far as I know, like one of the biggest budget games ever produced, and it shows. Like it's just the most lavishly produced world for you to just be in, and like. I did kind of like how they, like, it's kind of unfortunate that between 3 protagonists, not one of them is female. Like, they didn't take on that challenge. That was definitely a thing that would have
been a smarter movie.
People were kind of anticipating. Cool. But, like, with the 3 characters, I thought they kind of addressed this writing issue that they had with GTA 4, where, like, the character expressing himself in cutscenes is, like, wrestling with violence and having all these problems. And then when you take control, you can go blow up anything. Whereas here, it's like you have a psychotic character, a kind of balanced character, and then a character who's new to the world of crime. So I found myself kind of switching to the character that was appropriate for what I wanted to do gameplay-wise.
Folks, we're going to jump to a quick break and hear from the Rant Pack. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
I just don't have a whole lot to say about video games. You know, generally I don't have an issue with them. I do have an issue with people sort of giving up their, regularly scheduled real life to sit in a basement and play video games for hours and hours on end. But what I do know about video games, and this comes from a relative who's in the Air Force, is that kids who grow up with video games have much greater dexterity, and so there is an upside. That's all I know.
Video games, man. Video games these days are pretty much worlds onto their own like they never were before. When I grew up, we used to all get together, play video games around, we could laugh. It was like almost like a board game. It was a social aspect where you can interact with people who are physically present. That has completely drastically changed with real worlds that people can immerse themselves with and completely disappear. And I feel like that's what happens. When somebody's playing their game, you gotta leave them alone because they're somewhere else, they're not present.
Guys, I'll give you a chance to comment maybe real briefly on what Julie had mentioned from our rant back there about maybe some people spending too many hours, alluding to potential, video game addiction.
There is a huge culture in, Japan, where there's a lot of people who are escaping into that world rather than dealing with the pressures that's in society. But, I know a lot of hardcore gamers, and I wouldn't say they spend too much time doing it. There's definitely those people who do it,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't say
In
myself
South Korea, apparently,
Yeah.
like we have addiction centers for be it alcohol, narcotics, whatnot. Apparently, there is video game addiction clinics
Yeah.
for primarily, I guess, the massively multiplayer online role-playing games. I don't necessarily know if we're at that stage in North America. Katrine, what do you think?
I would still, now I'm not a psychologist, but I would still be really reluctant to label someone who plays too much game to be addicted.
It's been considered for DSM a couple times, right? And it keeps getting shut down, right?
Yeah, and I think part of it is it's actually difficult to define this clinically.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question that spending too much time playing video games, if it interferes with your social life, is a problem. But that's also true if you spend too much time reading books and don't go out and do anything but sit in your room and read books.
Sure.
And we find that's okay. And we don't have centers and we don't send people to psychologists because they read too much. We do, however, try to do this with people who play too many games or do too much of something we don't currently find socially acceptable. And I think that's a part of the problem.
It's the stigma of the word game, isn't it?
There is this tendency to consider games as being somehow less acceptable than other things. And this has been true with every medium that has come around. And so when I was young, it was television. And I was told that I was going to turn into a zombie if I watched too much television. And, people were worried about kids becoming addicted to TV. And now that has shifted. People don't talk about that anymore, but now we talk about games. And so this is the current.
I'm wondering what the term would be. Like, there's like couch potato and like bookworm. Is there like
But,
you're a gamer?
It's
Like,
funny
I
to
don't
me
know
though
if it's
because
treated
these
the same
people
way.
that are now, I guess having the concerns of these kids are playing too many video games, too many hours of being logged doing it. I mean, undoubtedly, I'm sure it does happen. But this is the same generation that was raised right in front of the TV.
I
Well,
think there's a responsibility as parents for younger kids to make sure that your kids actually know the balance between, go down, sit down
Yeah.
in your basement and play video games, and then get outside and enjoy some sun and run around and be crazy.
Well, how effective is the game rating system? I mean, I touched on Grand Theft Auto 5 earlier. It's a rated R game, made $1 billion. I mean, let's be honest, a lot of kids got a hold of that game. Yeah. Is the rating system, is it doing its job?
Like
No.
the
I think it
ESRB, they're very descriptive in ways that the film industry isn't necessarily transparent about their content. So, I think on some level it does come down to parents. Like, I used to work in video game retail, and we would get, it's like, just to let you know, this game is extremely violent. Like, I don't know if you know that. And, occasionally you'd get someone who's like, oh, I didn't know that. And then they'd take more interest in it and read about it. But, with Call of Duty seems to have crossed this line where it's just like, that's fine. It's just shooting guys, whatever. And then it's very popular amongst every generation.
And I think, the parents really do have a responsibility to monitor what their kids are doing, and that's where it has to really start.
Well, that's the
and
bottom.
end.
For me, that's where the discussion ends. I mean, that's the bottom line. It's like you police
I
your
mean, the
kids.
rating system is fine. I don't see any problem with it. It's quite descriptive, and you can get a pretty good idea of what you're going to come across in
But
a
you're
game
going to put
by
that
looking at
rating
what's
on there, and there's still going to be the kids that are like, I've got my babysitting job, I'm going to go off and get the game because it's violent.
Well,
So-
that's true, but people seem to turn a blind eye to children playing Grand Theft Auto, which they really shouldn't be. And yet, if you say, would you let your child watch Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction, they go, oh, no, I wouldn't do that.
That's different,
That's like-
yeah.
How's it different? That's not different.
But
They
this
are
is why,
both
and this is why it's
mature.
different. It's because, it's the stigma. It's a game, right? The game aspect of it, I think. Well, it's gaming you associate with fun.
In a way, it is
not
like
so much social responsibility.
40-hour immersive experience versus like a 2-hour film. So you could see it kind of drawing them in a different way. So like for me, it's kind of like the problem with violent games is it's like at some point it just becomes uncreative. Like it's just like, is there alternatives? Like what else can I be doing? Like in a way, it's like I feel like a weary war veteran. It's like I fought so many battles. I want something else. I want to do something.
It is fairly
fun.
linear, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's been some. To me, it's black and white. But I'll ask you, as an artist, video games. Is it an art form? Is it the new, I guess, celebrated medium of art?
I definitely think it's an art form. When you get in there and you see the amount of work that each artist puts into anything, it's probably more time than I spend sitting in front of my sketch pad just drawing. So it's a definite art form.
I mean, there's so much to it. There's voice acting. There's level design, character design,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
storyline.
There is starting to be a shift in how it's perceived. We just had the first film score, or the first game score that was recently nominated for
Probably, was it
a Grammy.
maybe?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes.
Yep.